You're listening to The Globalist, first broadcast on the 12th of February 2026 on Monocle Radio. The Globalist, in association with UBS. Live from London, this is The Globalist with me, Emma Nelson. A very warm welcome to today's programme. Coming up, with violence a key concern, we'll look at the Bangladeshi elections, the first since the uprising 2 years ago, and a moment when the country could find a stable footing. Also ahead in the next 60 minutes, we're in Germany as attendees of the Munich Security Conference battle a Lufthansa strike to get to the event. And
when you kill an animal, it's important to eat all part of it. It's also a sort of political position.
The chef at one of Paris's most beloved restaurants, Bistro talks to Monocle Radio about nose-to-tail eating. Plus the papers, and we hear from our team in Milan as our coverage of the world around the Winter Olympics continues. That's all coming up on The Globalist, live from London. First, a look at what else is happening in today's news. The Canadian police say the shooter who killed 8 people in rural British Columbia had a history of mental health issues. The messaging service WhatsApp says the Russian government has attempted to fully block the encrypted app, and the Republican-controlled US House of Representatives has backed a resolution in favour of ending tariffs on Canadian goods. Stay tuned to Monocle Radio throughout the day for more on these stories, but first, voting in Bangladesh is underway for the first time since an uprising forced the country's leader Sheikh Hasina from power and into exile. There is a heightened security presence as Bangladesh's police chief said that more than half of the country's 42,000 polling stations were vulnerable to violence. Well, Dr. Ishrat Hossain is associate at the Giga Institute for Asian Studies. She joins me on the line now from Berlin. Good morning, Ishrat.
Good morning.
So let us just establish a little bit of background here. We're looking now at 2024. 2 years ago, there was a violent crackdown on students with more than 1,000 people killed. And now we are here with the country attempting to have its first election since then. Where is Bangladesh as we stand?
I think Bangladesh stands at a crossroad because this is an extremely consequential election. It comes at the end of an autocratic rule by the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who ruled the country for 15 years with a tendency towards authoritarianism. And the last free and fair election where all parties participated and the voters could vote freely was in 2008. So you can imagine the kind of enthusiasm people have to go and simply exercise their democratic rights.
So explain to us now what is happening today, because we have a big reset taking place here, don't we? And there is an enormous focus on young people in Bangladesh. Having been subject to Sheikh Hasina's crackdown, are now the people that the real focus is on.
Exactly, you're right. Around 40% of the voters who will be voting today are under 37. And many of them have never actually voted in the past. And that is because there were 3 elections that took place under Sheikh Hasina's rule where voting was not free and fair and not participatory. So these were people who were stripped of their rights to just simply vote. So that's why there is a huge expectation that this election might be sort of, in a way, a point to make by the young people who led the uprising and kind of their stamp on what kind of government they want to see in future.
And so explain to us who is on the cards then to take, to assume power.
Yeah, despite all the enthusiasm, it's a little bit saddening to say that we are not seeing a new kind of politics coming into shape. The 2 main contenders are 2 long-established political parties. On one side, we have the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which has been in politics almost since Bangladesh's independence. And the second contender is Jamaat, which has formed an Islamic alliance. Jamaat is a moderate Islamic party and one of the largest Islamic parties of Bangladesh. And it has formed an Islamic alliance with some of the other smaller Islamic parties. So these are the two main blocks that the voter will choose from. And the student party that kind of emerged out of the 2024 uprising, they have aligned themselves with Jamaat, which puts them in a dubious position in terms of how voters see them as an agent of change for Bangladesh's future.
And so, which direction do we believe Bangladesh will go in today?
It is a little bit unpredictable to say which direction. If we look at the polling in the last few months that have come out, BNP is clearly the front runner. They are, according to one poll, they are expected to get more than 200 seats. But the unpredictability lies in a lot of swing voters, a lot of first-time voters who could sway these number of seats. Bangladesh has a first past the post system, so the percentage of voter is important, but it's not as important as the actual vote the candidates get. So that will determine exactly what kind of seat distribution we will see in the parliament. But one thing is certain, that it will be an election that is unlike any other.
As a Bangladeshi living in Germany, how about the diaspora vote?
Yes, this is a new element to this year's vote. This is the first time that the Bangladeshi Election Commission has introduced diaspora or expat voting. Bangladesh has around 12 million diaspora living in different countries. Around 9 million of these people are migrant workers. So this is the first time they will be able to vote. There is also a lot of enthusiasm around that. And in Berlin, it was done through postal ballot, and the commission introduced an app, and you had to register in that app to get your postal ballot, which you will then send back to the Bangladesh embassy in Berlin. So I'm guessing that was the mechanism for other countries as well.
Just explain to us a little bit more about how forward-thinking business leaders and indeed voters believe the political landscape to be, given the fact that we have Bangladesh being the world's second largest exporter of clothes after China, and it generates an astonishing $40 billion a year. Where is the sense that those who wish to take power are able to harness this enormous potential? You have this incredibly young population and you have this incredibly dynamic clothing sector. What can Bangladesh do to lift itself up and actually push forward?
This is a very important question and challenge for Bangladesh's future government, because if we look at the trajectory of Bangladesh, it is on track to graduate from being a least developed country, which gives it certain preferential treatments in terms of trade and other areas of getting loans and etc. So the government that comes to power will have to make provisions to adjust to this change of Bangladesh's status. And on the other hand, the question you asked about how businesses will how confident they feel about how Bangladesh will perform in the future. It also comes down to good governance and the management of the overall economy. And the next government will have to work on that, because the economy was at the brink when the former government was thrown out of power, and the interim government has done good work to make it more stable. But there certainly more needs to be done by the next government.
And then also, just looking geopolitically, there is a sense that excuse me. There is a sense that there are reports that Bangladesh is turning against the neighbour India and the regional repositioning of Bangladesh is something that needs to be paid attention to. What is Bangladesh trying to do or be? Where does it sit regionally now?
Yes, absolutely. The main problem right now in the region of politics is Bangladesh's relations with India, and it has been on a downward trajectory since the former prime minister fled to India and has taken refuge there. And she has been operating her political party's activities from India. The political party, which activities were banned in Bangladesh. So India is in a position where it needs to reset its relations with Bangladesh. And Bangladesh also, whoever comes to power, they need to understand the realities of the region and also Bangladesh's geopolitical reality being surrounded by India, and have to work towards at least normalizing this relationship, which has been very thorny in the past 1.5 years.
Dr. Ishrat Hossain, Associate at the Giga Institute for Asian Studies in Berlin. Thank you for joining us on The Globalist. The time is 9:11 a.m. in Kyiv, 7:11 a.m. here in London. Now, Kyiv has denied reports that Ukraine's president is to call elections in the spring. The administration has faced pressure from both Washington and from Moscow, not to mention an electorate weary of almost 4 years of war and a government mired in corruption scandals. Well, I'm joined now by Anastasia Galuchka, who's a Ukraine reporter for the Washington Post. She joins me now on the line from Kyiv. And before we start talking about any prospect of elections, there are reports overnight that there were attacks on Kyiv, Odessa and Dnipro. So explain to us, just bring us up to date with what happened there, please.
Last night there were multiple attacks. Ballistic missiles were sent to Kyiv, Odessa. In Odessa, energy infrastructure was hit. In Kyiv, we heard a couple of loud bangs last night. Luckily, there were no people killed during these strikes, but they were injured.
Okay, good to know with that. Thank you very much indeed. Let's move on to the elections. Where are we? Because there are so many conflicting reports coming out of Ukraine as to whether President Volodymyr Zelensky will call an election or he won't, or different departments are saying different things.
So Zelensky spoke to journalists yesterday, and obviously the question about the FT article came up. And he answered that quite straightforward, and he has maintained that, first of all, the idea of elections being announced on the 24th of February is absurd, in his opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of people. This is a very traumatic date for the Ukrainian people. The idea of announcing elections on this date, when this date is absolutely not about that. It is about the start of the full-scale invasion, the people who have sacrificed their lives since the beginning of that. And so a call for elections on that date is not going to happen. He said that very straightforward. And then with regards to elections being held, look, we know where this is coming from. Moscow is sending Witkov back to Trump to whisper in his ear that obviously, indeed, Ukraine needs to be, in order for Ukraine to prove itself to be a democratic state, it needs to hold elections. However, Ukraine is currently under martial law. 25% of election offices across the country are not working. They're either under occupation, they have been destroyed, or they're on frontline territory where it's impossible to hold any elections. Also, millions of Ukrainians have fled Ukraine due to the war. The idea of holding an election would mean we would have to lift martial law. In order to lift martial law, we would need the ability and the circumstances to do so. Under constant attacks while the war is happening, this is not an option for Ukraine. What Zelensky is doing right now is a strategy that he's been having with Trump for a while, which is, I would almost say, to placate Trump by saying, look, you want us to hold elections? We will do anything in our power. We have a parliamentary committee working on this. We will adjust laws, even though Zelensky does not have the majority right now in the parliament to adjust these laws. But we will do everything in our power to get that through. But on your side, we need from Russia for them to at least agree to a ceasefire. We cannot hold elections where people amass in certain places, when we run the risk of ballistic missiles or drone attacks.
Is there any appetite? So I do apologise for interrupting, but is there actually any appetite from Ukrainian people themselves to have an election?
None whatsoever. Whoever I speak to, whether they're civilian or military, they don't see the point. There is no other viable candidate in everyone's opinion. I know there's been talk about Zaluzhny, but let's be very honest, Zaluzhny is military. He's not a political man. The same can be said about Zelensky, but Zelensky has proven his stripes over the past couple of years. Zaluzhny hasn't. He is not cut out for the... He's not cut out for the leadership, or at least he doesn't have the backing of the Ukrainian people insofar that they believe that he can pull this through. It would be Zelensky again, even if we would do elections right now. I don't see any other viable candidates.
The difficulty that Volodymyr Zelensky faces now, though, is that this is a question of sacrifice on every front, either in order to achieve peace with Russia, despite his promise not to cede territory, land would be on the table as something that would be given up, and if not, then he would have to sacrifice his own power.
Zelensky has made it very clear multiple times throughout the years that he is absolutely fine with not staying in power. He has during previous talks with journalists where I was present, he has made it clear that if me giving up my presidency would lead to peace in Ukraine, I would do it. Almost everyone understands that is not going to happen. The war with Russia will not stop if Zelensky seizes power. And for the Ukrainian people, it is a question of, this is not the time. There is a full-scale invasion going on. We are fighting on every front. Right now, holding an election will do nothing except for tearing the country apart inside out. And once again, there is no will from anyone. There's no calls from within Ukraine to hold elections.
There is nonetheless discussions that not just a presidential election to be held, but there is talk about a vote on a potential peace deal. How important is it that anything that Zelensky and his team agree on in principle, were there to be a suggestion of a peace deal, how important is it that should be put to the people?
According to, once again, Zelensky's talks with journalists in the past, he has made it clear that for him it is personally very important that the Ukrainian people decide about the fate of Ukraine and Ukrainian territory. As you said, the territory, and especially the Donbas part of this, is a very difficult discussion. It is very morally conflicted on every side, because we have seen what happens in occupation. When we watched the liberation of Izium and Kherson, we have found the torture chambers. We have seen what happened in Bucha, which is the most vivid image, I think, that Americans and foreign audiences can recall about post-Russian occupation and what it does to civilian population. So the idea of ceding territory, of actually giving it up, is something that for Ukrainians means, well, you're leaving your people to die and to be tortured under occupation. Now, Zelensky has made clear, though, that whatever is being decided, that there will be a need for a referendum. The Ukrainian people need to decide with him on this. But once again, it is a question about security. And Zelensky has made it very clear, first security, then politics.
Thank you so much. Anastasia Galushka, Ukraine reporter for The Washington Post, joining me on the line from Kiev. You're listening to The Globalist with me, Emma Nelson, still to come.
Good morning from Munich, where we are the first of a rather large Monocle delegation to come to the German city and see what this very highly anticipated edition of the Munich Security Conference will bring us.
That is Monocle's Anita Riotta there on the line from Munich. She'll be joining us in a little while to talk about the Munich Security Conference, so stay with us.
Craft is a matter of perspective, a unique outlook, and obsessive attention to detail. With UBS's Chief Investment Office Houseview, we're focused on identifying the latest investment opportunities and market risks to help you achieve your financial goals, so you get the big picture broken down into thought-provoking insights. Delivered daily and curated by over 200 globally connected, locally active analysts. UBS. Banking is our craft.
Let's continue now with today's newspapers. Joining me is Vincent McAviney, political reporter, regular Monocle Radio contributor. Good morning, Vinny. Vinny, how are you?
Good morning.
What have you been up to?
Well, it's been raining a lot in Britain, hasn't it? It's pretty much rained every single day since the 2nd of January, which has been a bit grim this time of year.
It's existentially challenging.
Yeah. And I'm training
damp.
for the marathon again, and it's a bit harder to get up every morning when it's just pouring down.
Send him jackets. You do have the waterproofs, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's a different side of challenge. Well, we wish you the very best of luck with that one, and I could try and buy you an umbrella, but it would slow you down. What have you spotted in the papers?
Oh, well, it's a busy morning. The top story I saw in the New York Times is really interesting. Trump's trade deal with India has become a headache for Modi. Who would have thought doing a trade deal with Donald Trump that was pretty rushed would become a bit of a disaster for him? So obviously, India was suffering under that huge 50% export tariff that Donald Trump had slapped on because of its continued purchasing of Russian oil. And so there was this rushed announcement on February 3rd that the two had done this deal. India is notoriously very hard to strike deals with. It's very protectionist. The UK struck one about 18 months ago that was seen as a bit of a breakthrough. And now this deal had been done. But it seems like both sides aren't clear what they actually did, because according to the US, it meant that India was going to stop buying Russian oil, which would have been a huge coup for Donald Trump and a bit of something to cheer for in Ukraine. However, that is not exactly what the Indians thought that they had agreed to. And there was also differences when it came to agriculture, particularly the pulses, which is the sort of dried seeds that you make things like dal from, the main source of protein in India. The US seemed to think that they had got access to the Indian market for that, something that India wants to be fiercely independent with and could really undermine their own farming population. So it seems that this was a bit of a half-baked deal where both sides were a bit confused on what the other was agreeing to.
Which is interesting to think as to how do they believe that a deal had actually been done when neither of them knew what was in it?
Well, quite. I mean, I don't think Donald Trump is always someone who's got his mind on the details, but Narendra Modi is someone who and with the tradition in India, particularly of being so protective of their farmers, that it seems very strange that they didn't have a really firm agreed text. These only came to light when the White House put out a bit of a scorecard on what the deal would mean for Americans. And suddenly India thought, hold on a second, this isn't what we thought we had signed up to.
Let's move to a story in The Guardian about a Swiss population poll. Switzerland is going to vote on a proposal from the far right to limit the country's population to 10 million. That's quite an idea.
Yeah, this is a really fascinating thing. We know that Switzerland loves to have some plebiscite, and this is from the far-right Swiss People's Party, who don't have much success in kind of getting these polls over the line, but they're wanting to bring in a sort of lockstep way of trying to keep the population below 10 million. So, for instance, if the country's permanent population of 9.1 million exceeds 9.5 million, it would want to deny entrance to newcomers, including asylum seekers and the families of foreign residents. And if the population reaches 10 million, further restrictions would come into force, which would put a limit to free movement with the EU, its biggest export market. And there has been quite a big boost in the population of Switzerland over the past decade, with now 27% of Swiss residents not being citizens. And they're saying this population explosion story that we're hearing in a lot of countries is inflating rents, straining public infrastructure, etc. But what's really telling is that although there's been a big pushback from Swiss business, a poll in December found that 48% of voters actually backed these proposals and thought that Switzerland should not exceed a population of 10 million.
Indeed, and this is a difficulty that Switzerland always faces. It is a country of structure, it is a country of order, and it is a country of certainty. Yet it absolutely depends on being incredibly nimble.
Yes, it does. And I mean, it's already, we know from, people that have moved there, one of our former, or still a Monocle colleague who moved there recently, that when you do move, there is a lot of bureaucracy to get, around, to be able to access the rental market, to do all those kind of things. So it's not the easiest country to even transition into. But I think, if you're putting restrictions on people moving there, being able to bring their family. Think about all the kind of executives, all those big companies that bring expertise in around the world. They will really struggle if people aren't allowed to move with their spouses and children.
Let's move to the Times and a story which is we do things to our bodies to make ourselves look different. And we are doing an awful lot of things to our bodies to make ourselves look different and make ourselves look a little bit how we would like to look. I never realised that a freckle was a thing.
Yes, so
I knew it was a thing, obviously,
this story
but I never
really
used
struck
it.
out to me. I mean, you don't have any, and I have a lot.
Do you? Right, I'm going to have a look.
Yeah, I definitely do. They do, as you get older, they fade a bit, but as soon as the sun comes out, up they pop. But I was really fascinated a few years ago. I was on holiday, had a bit of colour, the freckles were out, and I took some photos, and I was looking at them, and I realised the app I was using, without my consent, without me asking to, had AI airbrushed all of my freckles out. It thought I wanted a completely smooth complexion, and I didn't want that at all. I wanted to look how I looked.
You wanted to look like Vinny.
Exactly.
What a surprise.
Exactly. But this is a really interesting story in the Times about people, freckles have they've been airbrushed off models in magazines as well, and people have kind of complained about that, and people now wanting to enjoy their freckles, but some people going as far as having them tattooed onto their faces when they actually fade with age because they miss them.
That's incredible. There is a case study of one woman who's had it done, and I think she's an influencer. She's a content creator, so that tells us everything about what she has to do in life. I mean, surely people have better things to do.
Yeah, possibly.
Apart from
but
staring.
It's interesting, I think, that, freckles are seen as something that people want to get rid of. But, going back to that app, it didn't ask, if it had changed my eye colour automatically thinking, everyone wants to be blue-eyed, it was a little bit strange.
It is. Let's talk about a little bit strange. Great article in the New York Times about Olympic figure skaters. I was watching it last night. What a thrill. It's all to do with the music, and there is a problem.
This is fascinating. So this is all about Olympic copyright. Now, until Sochi, the rules were that you had to really, most of the disciplines in ice skating, use classical music, basically music without lyrics. So most of it would be well out of kind of the copyright limit, free to use kind of thing. But since then, it's changed, and we've seen people doing routines to the Spice Girls and all kinds. But the biggest battle, it seems, that these skaters are having is getting the copyright clearance, because it's very complex. There's obviously international broadcasting involved, clips for social media. It lives in the Olympic archive. And some of these skaters were flying into Milan Cortino without having actually had the final sign-off to use the music. So you think they've spent months, years of their life preparing these intricate routines timed exactly to music, and they haven't got the permission. And this happened to a Canadian dance pair who couldn't get permission off AC/DC. We've had another skater who only at the last minute, simply by going on social media and pleading, managed to get the music unlocked for his Minions routine. He's a Spanish skater, but this is something that's really catching them out, and there's a lot of paperwork involved, and you think they've got that much to focus on, not knowing if you can use the piece of music must be a nightmare.
There's a great bit of this article saying that a couple who competed for Spain travelled to Italy unsure that the clearance for their song of choice from the soundtrack to June would come in time, and what they decided to do is message Hans Zimmer themselves to try and see if he'd say yes. And then, of course, there's a question of cost, because it costs a lot of money to pay for copyright and for copyright usage, and the IOC apparently doesn't help.
It doesn't stump up, so it's on the individual skaters themselves. I mean, I guess, it's so interesting, because you think when you think about those big performances, Torval and Dean, the sort of bolero stuff, the music can kind of take on a life of its own. It can really kind of, be remembered forever because of a great, gold-winning performance like this. But I guess it goes to the issues that a lot of musicians are facing, where the streaming has diluted the amount of income they can get, and they want to make sure they're properly compensated.
And no money left over for freckle tattoos. Vincent McAviney, thank you so much for joining me as ever in the studio. You're listening to The Globalist. Now here's a look at some of these stories we're keeping an eye on today. The Canadian police say the shooter who killed 8 people in a rural British Columbian town had a history of mental health issues. 18-year-old Jessie Van Rutselaar shot dead her mother and stepbrother before killing 5 pupils and a teacher. The messaging service WhatsApp says the Russian government has attempted to fully block the encrypted app. It's accused Russia of wanting to drive people towards its state-owned platform. The Republican-controlled US House of Representatives has backed a resolution in favour of ending tariffs on Canadian goods. But even if the measure passes in the Senate, it's expected to be vetoed by the president. And the Mexican Navy says it's conducted a coordinated operation with the US Coast Guard against drug smugglers in the Pacific Ocean. Almost 200 packages containing cocaine were seized. And those are the headlines on Monocle Radio. Now, it's, 8:30 a.m. in Munich. It is 7:30 a.m. here in London. So let us head to Munich, preparing to be descended upon by leaders and defence ministers for the annual Munich Security Conference. One of those who managed to get in last night was Anita Riotta, our producer of our Foreign Desk podcast. She's already there. Good morning, Anita. How's Munich looking?
Good morning, Emma. It's looking very beautiful and sunny right now. I think we are expecting a bunch of snow, if not rain, over the weekend. So we are enjoying the sun as long as we have it. But as you said, we are very lucky to be here already. We have colleagues who had to change all of their travel plans to sort of slink in last night because it's been really tough to get in. There's been lots of strikes. And so we are very, very fortunate to wake up here this morning.
Indeed, and Munich is not a bad place to wake up in. And this Lufthansa general strike, which is what has caused so much disruption. Is there any sense actually that this might be getting in way of what might be able to be done at the Munich Security Conference?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think, this is actually not even the first time we as the Foreign Desk team have seen a conference a little bit hobbled by a travel strike like this. Back when we were in Greece for the Delphi Economic Forum, we had the Athens airport come have a strike. And so obviously that was basically the main entry point for all the delegates there. Lufthansa, obviously, as the German national carrier, is responsible for so many flights, not only into Munich, but if you want to reroute and go to Berlin, and then maybe jump on a train or Frankfurt, that is also not going to be an easy option for you. And this will be all day today, this strike. It is unclear if it will extend into tomorrow and the weekend. But, a lot of people were expecting to get in today. I do think maybe the organizers will find some solace in the fact that if the strike remains confined to today, a very substantial amount of delegations are set to arrive tomorrow.
Okay, so who are the big names that we're expecting to hear from and see?
So we, from the U.S. front, interestingly, last year, as listeners will remember, due to his very incendiary speech, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance was here, as is the norm with the U.S. delegation. He will not be here this year, and the U.S. delegation will be led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio instead. And then we have the usual bevy of European heads of state. We will have French President Emmanuel Macron here, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, Olaf Scholz, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will be here, maybe almost excited to come and deal with the hot topic issues of the war in Ukraine and the transatlantic relationship after facing a really, really tough week at home. These might actually seem like slightly easier topics to him. I couldn't say. And the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, who of course has been all over the news recently as the Trump administration has sort of laid plans onto Greenland, will also be here. So as always, it's a very, very high-level cast here in Munich.
Indeed. I mean, the absence, though, of the likes of Donald Trump. We don't have Mark Carney because of what's happened with the shooting yesterday. But those who have not decided to go, how important is that the empty seats? What does that say about the relevance and the influence of the security conference?
I think you're right that the empty seat, especially if J.D. Vance, does say a lot. He was here last year saying that Europe, in maybe brusquer terms than I'm about to say, but that Europe had to stand on its own 2 feet, and the assumption of U.S. protection that is, underpinned the world order of the last 80 years is not something that the world should continue to assume will remain there. And so then for him to not even show up this year with all of these negotiations that are very important, it seems very strange. I think, especially because he was in Europe this week. He had a very mixed reception at the Milano Cortina Olympics, and he continued his travels in Europe. So he was also here. You never know with the Munich Security Conference if he is has plans to make a last minute appearance. But I think also the sort of actual importance of that empty seat is, of course, one of the bigger ticket agenda items of this weekend will be the continuation of Ukraine peace talks, and the fact that after these big concessions that we've seen in the last week, a referendum, elections, that actually Zelensky is able to come to Munich, speak with his European allies who are promising a harder line on Russia, who are saying, if Zelensky is having to make concessions, we will make sure that he is extracting security guarantees worth his while. That the U.S. just does not see itself anymore as part of that process, as part of that coalition, as part of the table that comes together to issue Russia a hard line.
And this is leading to wider questions about the way that the world operates. I think the Munich Security Report said that the world is entering what's being described as a period of wrecking ball politics. When we were talking about finance and business and the rules-based order of the world, Mark Carney drove a cart and horses through that in a speech in Davos. Is there a sense that this conference this time around is a moment when everybody takes a long, hard look at how security works?
Absolutely, Emma. And I'm really glad you brought up the Munich Security Report. I do encourage listeners, it's just on their website. It's open to the public. I think it is worthwhile to sort of cast an eye over, because as you said, they're calling this a period of wrecking ball politics. They're saying that the U.S. is among the most prominent of the countries trying to free themselves from the existing order and rebuild a more prosperous nation. As a result, the report says more than 80 years after construction began, the U.S.-led post-1945 international order is now under destruction.
Anita, sorry to interrupt you. What are the plans for Monocle and the events surrounding our presence there this weekend?
We, as both a Sicilian and a producer, I will just tease that we have some very high-level interviews coming in. I will not name names because that seems like playing with fire. But like you said, we are very excited. We will have a lot of defense ministers come in, talk to us about what it means, this evolving security landscape. We are hosting an event this evening, the Monocle event. So if any listeners are in Munich, do drop us a line if you would like to join us. We have the Hitachi event with our partners, Hitachi Energy, and we will discuss, unfortunately, an agenda item that seems to be not high enough up on the list anymore these days. But the energy transition, how does that play in with our security concerns? How can we make sure that, we have not taken our eye off this incredibly important ball?
Monocle Radio's Anita Riotta in Munich. We wish you the very best for the next couple of days. And we'll be checking in with the team out at the Munich Security Conference over the next few days and programmes. You're listening to Monocle Radio. Now, Le Bistro Paul Bayard in the 11th arrondissement is perhaps one of the most beloved bistros in Paris. It opened in 1997 to much acclaim by the husband and wife duo Bertrand Aubonneau and Gwenaëlle Cadoré. Now, a new book is out revealing some of the restaurant's most famed recipes. Le Bistro Paul Bayard, French comfort food from the Parisian restaurant. Everything from beef tartare to creme caramel. It's all in there. A Monocle Radio senior correspondent, Fernando Augusto Pacheco, heard from Bertrand to find out about the restaurant and the book.
We like the idea that people try to do the recipes, and we wrote them very simply. They are very simple recipes. There is no secret in that. The only thing is to find the right product and the right time to do it.
The right product is the secret. And I think you're lucky. In France, I think is a good place for that, right? So all the food produce do you get from the same people for years and years? So how does it work, like when you buy kind of those ingredients, as you're just saying to me?
Yeah, we're working with the same people for years, that's true. And we're always looking to buy it from directly to the farmers, to the producers. And we do also a bit of rangis when we need it. But 90% of our suppliers are people we know, where the animals are bred and all that. Quite a lot of our vegetables are done in the farm we have in the Normandy.
Oh, that's great. I wonder if you could tell us, do you have like a favorite recipe or perhaps an iconic one? And I must add, I mean, I had the best Grand Marnier soufflé that I had in my life, actually, at Paubert. It was really fantastic. I almost went for a second, but then I was like, okay, Fernando, calm down, you know?
I think the recipes I like to share, the iconic recipe of the Paubert is the steak au poivre, the filet de bœuf au poivre, that's true. I love the way we're doing the sauce. Also, I want to have a lot of, how you say, des abeilles, sweet braise, pork head, all those sort of things. Liver, kidneys, that's for us also very important.
Yes.
It's not always the thing we sell the most, but for me it's really important because it's the base of the French cooking.
And I think people should have it more, and we should eat all parts almost of the meat.
Yeah, sure. I think it's important to, when you kill an animal, it's important to eat all part of it. It's also a sort of politic position.
I agree 100%. And Bertrand, I want to ask as well, besides the food, which is, a reason for the success of a restaurant. So tell us a bit more, because I feel like, the importance of the staff, there's other elements, because they were funny, the waiters. There was a sense of, I don't know, I think that's part of the appeal of a restaurant, right? Wouldn't you say so? Do you have, perhaps you work with the same people since the beginning sometimes? Of course, you have newer people as well, but tell us about the importance of the people.
We have people working for 25 years with us. For example, the chef Thierry is there since 27 years. That makes also part of the bistro. A lot of people knows him. He comes in the place to say hello to people. We have also that with the waiters. We have a waitress called Nathalie, she's with us since 15 years. 3 weeks ago, we were in New York with my wife and my daughter to do a pop-up from Paubert. And we had clients in New York saying, "Oh, how is Nathalie now? Is she always with you?" And that makes part of the bistro.
I agree. And it's interesting, I was going to mention the New York pop-up. So is that your plan as well, to do more events like this, kind of spreading the word of Paubert in other cities?
Yes and no. I could say yes if I was 10 years, my age was not so advanced. And now I'm a bit tired to do that, but it's always funny to do it. So we try to do it once or twice a year. In New York, we did it in the last 3 or 4 years. We did it in Brooklyn once time, in New York, the city this time. We did also it in Montreal last year. So we try to do it around one or twice a year. Also important for the chef who is coming with us to visit other countries to see how the customers are thinking about us and all that. That's really important.
And I wonder if, the steak poivre, that's the iconic dish as well from Paubert. I mean, I wonder if you can share perhaps any other kind of recipe that you think, that's the one. If somebody wants to try something at home, perhaps that's what they should go for.
We did something very funny a few years ago. I have a friend which is a journalist in the States, and she decided with all her followers to say, we are going to do the iconic dish of Bistro Paubert next Saturday. And she had thousands of people answering who tried from all the US. And I think that was a really, I would say, interesting and funny thing. If I had another recipe to do a bit iconic, I would do the cervelle de veau, the brains of the vide, which is becoming iconic also at the Bistro Paubert.
That's a good tip. By the way, Bertrand, do you enjoy eating in other places in Paris? Do you still think Paris is the gastronomic capital of the world?
Yeah, sure. I think we are always looking for new restaurants, new places. new dishes. Every week or 3 or 4 times every month, we try to do a new restaurant with my daughter and my wife and to see what's happening. It's a bit like a theater scene, and we are looking around for new ideas and what people are doing.
The brilliant Bertrand Obono talking to Monocle Radio's senior correspondent Fernanda Pacheco about Le Bistro Paul Bert. And the book, Le Bistro Paul Bert, French Comfort Food from the Parisian Restaurant, is out now. You're listening to The Globalist.
IQ, EQ, and AI. 3 components key to the craft of innovation at UBS. Because to stay ahead in a rapidly evolving age, you need a partner with decades of experience, endless passion for the work, and a finger on the pulse of leading technologies, bridging human expertise with artificial intelligence, all to elevate you. UBS, banking is our craft.
16:45 in Tokyo, 8:45 a.m. in Zurich. Now let's have a roundup of cultural news from Japan. Kim Kayen is a Japan-based translator and writer for publications including Nikkei and the National Geographic, and she joins me from our Tokyo studio. Good afternoon, Kim.
Hello, Emma.
How's Tokyo looking? How's Kim looking? How's it all looking where you are?
I'm all in green today. It's a really sunny day in Tokyo. We had a bit of snow at the weekend, which was a surprise, but that's all melted now.
Yes, that tiny bit of snow that deluged you when you were having your elections. It made for very beautiful pictures, but probably quite hard to get to the polling booth.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about what you have found in the cultural press at the moment. There's this astonishing story about a hunter who hunts down bears, which is a problem in Japan at the moment, and yet turns it into art.
Yeah. So this is Aoi Nagasawa. She's a 31-year-old hunter/artist. So she started. First and foremost, she's a painter, and got really into painting bears, especially when she went to Ani Prefecture and met the Mitagi people.
And tell us a little bit more about what happened.
So she actually went there in 2016, I think, and in search of an angler because she was really into fish and fishing. And it just so happened that he'd unfortunately passed away several years earlier. But his family were there, and they were all Mitagi, and they run an inn, which is actually sharing this Mitagi culture. Mitagi are hunter-gatherers based in this very particular area in Akita Prefecture. Okay,
just talk us through the whole Mitagi culture as well. I mean, they're beautifully documented in images from Japan dating back, for centuries. Explain to us what this artist then did. So she goes and documents the Mitagi people, but then she starts to hunt bears. And so talk us through what happens next.
Well, yeah. So her first day, she's come to meet this person, and unfortunately he passed away a couple of years prior, and she stayed at this inn. And they're like, well, we're Mitagi, this is our culture. And she was really interested. And they were like, do you want to just pop into the van with the leader of the Mitagi people tomorrow? And she told me when I spoke to her, she was like, I don't know why I did it. I just did it. And she became really, really good friends and developed this really beautiful connection with them, and then started to get really interested in hunting herself. And then a few years later, in 2020, I think, during COVID, she then got her own hunting license.
And then what did she do? Because obviously she's creating art, but at the same time there is this sheer brutality to what she actually does.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I think the Mitagi culture, and I think this is especially what's appealed to Aoi in particular, is that it's a real celebration of the sort of beautiful biodiversity that we have in the mountains, that they have in the mountains, especially where she's from, which is a super wild and remote. So, yeah, I think it's brutal on one hand, but then on the other, at the end of every hunt, which actually really only happens a couple of times, 3 or 4 times a year, to my understanding, they'll all say a prayer to the mountain goddess, and then everybody really divides up absolutely everything that has been hunted or even foraged. everyone divides it up really equally.
Okay, let's head ourselves back to Tokyo for the ICC exhibition, Media Art.
Yeah. So I went there on Thursday today. I went there on Tuesday to the ICC. It's a really great gallery about media art run by NTT Communications, which is a large network provider in Japan. This is not an advert, by the way. It just so happens to be one of my favourite places in Tokyo to see art and media art in itself. And at the moment, they've got this really great exhibition by Mikami Seiko. So unfortunately passed away about 10 years ago now. But they've got this exhibition called Towards a Mausoleum of Perception, and he's got showing some of her works from a few years back.
Talk us through Mikami Seiko.
Well, she was really interested in media art in itself, especially the way that we see things. And she said really famously, like, the eyes are not just there for seeing; you can also hear with your eyes. And so I was actually, so this exhibition itself has a few large-scale, it's for the rare because they're really, really big, so it's quite hard to show them all at once, but it's got together a few large-scale pieces that she's done. And I'll give you an example, which is eye tracking informatics. And you're kind of like strapped to this chair and they put the goggles on you and then it traces your eyes, and then wherever your eyes are looking, it kind of relays that to the screen. And creates really. And
the thinking behind it, and just looking at what she does, is this idea that the way that you connect and form relationships with the outside world is actually down to the very act of perception. So that's why they sit you on a chair and do things to you. And she talks about the crossover between the ear and the eye and the touch as well. So talk us through that a bit more.
Yeah. So I think you've got, so for example, you'll be like moving, or so one of the exhibitions, I think it was a Desire of Codes. So she uses that, well, this is not the ear and the eye really, this is more about moving, but she uses that so you'll be in a giant room, it's a really, really large hall, and then she tracks, she's got these, I can't count, it's hundreds of sort of CCTV cameras, and they track all your movements as you're walking around. And as you're walking, it goes click, 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 and you can kind of hear everything. Well, I guess that's with your ears. You can kind of hear your sound because it's kind of following what as you're walking around, and it's relayed on the screen as well. So lots of layers to each piece of hers, I think.
And a quick chat about the cherry blossom forecast. How's it looking?
Yes, it's quite early blooms all around this year. I think. Let me have a look. We've got Sendai, Tokyo's a few days early, so that's expected to be in bloom full bloom on the 20th of March.
Okay, so things are happening earlier then.
Yeah, happening earlier. I think it's because we're supposed to have quite a warm March. We'll see how that goes.
Kim Kane, thank you so much for joining us on the line from our studio in Tokyo. Kim is a writer and translator. You're listening to The Globalist on Monocle Radio. Finally, today you may have spotted that we have teams both in Munich but also in Milan this week. Monocle in Milan airs from 9 a.m. London time, 10 a.m. if you're listening in the Italian city. Behind the microphone this week is Monocle's Europe editor-at-large, Ed Stocker, and he joins me now to tell us what's happening in today's programme. A very good morning to you, Ed. How's your view today? Because it's rather wonderful.
You know, the view is normally very wonderful. I'm a bit jealous because I think Andrew Muller's going to get lots of sunshine when he's presenting next week. And we'll be waxing lyrical about the awesome alpine views. Today, I'm sad to say, it's very drizzly. And literally, we have cloud enveloping the 47th floor of Allianz Tower. So I actually cannot even see the city of Milan right now. But I'm sure it will clear up.
Your imagination will do the trick. OK, tell us what's been getting everybody excited where you are.
There has been a lot going on. There's just so much to pack in these games. Briefly, some highlights. from yesterday. 21-year-old American Jordan Stoltz won the 1,000-meter men's final in speed skating and actually set an Olympic record. He stole it from Dutchman Jenning de Boo. He was a favourite, Stoltz, but he had to come behind in order to win. But he is clearly a phenomenon. Just 21 years old. He made his debut in Beijing in 2017. So obviously a long career ahead of him there. And then what else? So we move on to ice dance.
Yes, please. I was watching it last night and gosh, it got a bit fraught, didn't it?
What were your thoughts, Em? I'm going to turn the question on you.
Oh, I was just looking at the Brits who never get anywhere, and this is, well, they do pretty well, but we'll come to that. But you need to lay out the story, the background as to why there was so much angst when it came to ice, when it came to dancing.
Yeah, well, exactly. So the US pair, Schock and Bates, were the favoured couple. They're actually married off the ice, and they ended up winning silver. With the French pair, basically the French pair, who have not been dancing for very long, managed to win the gold. And there was a bit of controversy. We've been talking about it here at Monocle, actually, about whether they should have won or not. Obviously, it was extremely close, and some people have different views. So obviously, they've got it. France came first, the US came second, and Canada came third. As you mentioned, there was heartbreak for Fear and Gibson, the British couple, Team GB couple. Unfortunately, there was a tripping mistake, which meant they fell outside the medals. They were hoping to be the first British ice dance pair to win a medal since Torvill and Dean, we all remember them, back in 1992 when they got a bronze. And so really, more heartbreak for Team GB in these Winter Olympics. They are yet to win a medal. There have been a lot of nearlies, almost, not quite so far in lots of things, from being on the snow to curling. We'll have to wait and see. There's still a long way to go in these games. Let's hope the medal standing improves. At the moment, Norway are leading the board, with Italy, the host nation, in third.
Okay, the Finns cross as well.
The Finns are cross as well, yeah, ice hockey. So here in Milan still, there are a couple of titans who were playing yesterday in ice hockey. Sweden and Finland, both, pretty good at the sport. But there was a shock defeat for Finland. Slovakia stormed it. It was a pretty action-packed, fast game. Slovakia ended up beating Finland 4-2. And Italy, who are not a particularly strong team in the ice hockey, also gave Sweden a run for their money. They scored the first goal, in fact, but ended up losing. In the end, Sweden prevailed 5-2. So an interesting day in the hockey.
Ed, we have 10 seconds to find out what's going on in your programme today.
Oh my gosh, we've got a former Italian figure skater. It's quite a sporty program today. We've got someone from Bar Nico, the incredible bar in Milan. We've got someone from Canada Hockey to talk about hockey, to keep the theme of hockey, and I'm probably out of time. But there's lots more. Tune in just over an hour's time.
Thank you so much. Ed Stocker there joining us from Allianz Tower in Milan. For more of our coverage from the Winter Olympics, join Monocle in Milan. We're there every day this week and next, live, as Ed said, from 9 a.m. London time, 10 a.m. if you are in Milan. And you can listen live on Monocle Radio or wherever you get your podcasts afterwards. It's well worth it. But that's all the time we have for today's programme. The warmest of thanks to all my guests and to the producers, Angelica Jobson, Carlotta Rebello and Rima Takahashi. Our researcher was Annalise Maynard and our studio manager was Christy O'Grady. After the headlines, more music on the way. The briefing's live at midday here in London. The Globalist is back at the same time tomorrow. But for now, from me, Emma Nelson, goodbye. Thank you very much for listening.